If you could get into a time machine and go back in time and do it all over again, and you had that opportunity, imagine that. Well, the thousands of postgrads that we spoke to in the last 4.5 years, that we saw their faces, we talked to them about what we were doing, we spoke about the challenges that students face, we got their feedback. These students really shared keen insights on what they really wish they knew in college and early on. You that's listening to this right now is basically sitting in a place right now where you can know well ahead of time the massive mistakes that you can avoid. This is such a great thing and something that we're really excited about at StudentSuccessU.com and also the Student Success Podcast. We hope that you listen to this video with an open ear of what to be aware of, and we're going to give you these 20 mistakes in a pretty rundown list so that you can hear them, but keep in mind that perspective is from postgrads that already graduated, so they're looking at them like mistakes that they made. We want you to look at them more like awareness points to avoid the mistakes. So keep that in mind as you're listening, and we want to make sure that you know this is a shotgun format in this third video. We actually will give you a full cast on this on our podcast at the Student Success Podcast on iTunes, SoundCloud, or Stitcher. And you can subscribe to that podcast on iTunes and hear the long cast version of this in a little bit more detail. You can also hear the fast cast versions that we give as well. So enjoy this video, and we want to make sure that you've got everything that you need right now as a young person to really take advantage of and avoid, so you're in a better position to be successful. Let's start off. Number one, the biggest thing we found with many postgrads was waiting too long. And it's pretty easy to say that, obviously, after you've graduated, right? You can see that hindsight later on. And that's what many of them had kind of indicated to, was they waited too long for internships, to go to their first career fairs, really being able to align their interests and aligning those interests with experts in the fields. They really wish they had a chance to do a lot more of that freshman year, sophomore year, just because the awareness factor really came into play. Number two, ties right in, was that they were not aware of what they needed to do, and taking that effort early, they really weren't aware of what the effort was that it took to get a job today, and really what it takes to get hired, right? And how much building those relationships much earlier matter, because today it's a little bit different with hiring managers, startups, executives, people that onboard students into their companies. There's a trust factor that many postgrads felt like was an inhibitor, and they spoke about this being in a voice, I guess you could say, that many hiring managers didn't trust their skill sets or felt that postgrads weren't prepared. And we indicated really kind of questions to them. We brought up questions to them. And they talked a lot about, the trust factor and really being able to trust the skill sets of them. And it's a lot of what they've heard, right? So we wanted to bring this bit to you that, knowing and building relationships with people much, much earlier to build that trust curve takes a little longer today to build. And that's something that you can be aware of right now. Number three, many students felt like when they looked back, they picked their major basically out of a hat, right? They guessed. They had very little reasons or substance. Many said, we just wanted to help people, or we really were interested in this subject matter, but did very little to delve into the field, work environment and meeting with experts beforehand. A lot of those things we'll mention later, but, really just guessing and didn't investigate enough. Number four, choosing their college based on the trees and the vibe alone. We laugh about that one, but the foliage. Many students joked around and said, we feel like sometimes that we came on campus and it was just beautiful. It was awesome. And we met two people we really liked. We picked our roommate. We had a great seminar, orientation, and boom, we were off and running. But, a couple students really noted as well that the things that they ended up getting into or were interested in, their school either didn't offer or, they realized like most of what the school offered, they weren't interested in. So they didn't have much flexibility when they wanted to switch their field. And a number of them talked about how they bridged out and changed schools because they really didn't do enough due diligence early on to know that they did have enough options there. Number five, the one-track mind traps of I have time, I'll figure it out later, and really just kind of one-track focused on grades and social life without a whole lot of discovery. That was a big one, right? It's an easy mentality to have, and it's one that many students embrace because they're told to focus. But the focus that they need to have is almost a balanced focus. Focus in a couple of areas that they can really spend some time on to know specifically not only what they want to do, but really how to balance their time and how to actually, meet with people in their fields. Number 6, having more communication with professors, advisors, fellow students, alumni, and experts. That was one that many students said they really had those opportunities and didn't take advantage of them really, really early. And we mean early, like first semester freshman year, second semester freshman year, because freshman year is no longer a waste of time. Number 7, lacking a process and a plan behind their early path. That true foundation, that true purpose, having that right mindset, and really having a couple plans in place and being able to kind of foster these thoughts and collaborate with their peers and also with not just professors, but people off campus as well. Number 8, not viewing themselves as a brand. And this is also an approach, but this is also a setup as well, and getting themselves set up for success. Many were just doing that as they entered into senior year or graduated, and that process has to start just out of high school and into college. And many say, well, I don't know what I want to do. Our answer is we'll do everything else first. Everything else first means really knowing what you don't want to do, and then be able to create a brand of you that starts to tell your story. Number 9, went abroad to party, not connect with experts overseas. This one was funny a lot that were in abroad programs. We had about 7 in one session, and 3 out of about 20 in another session also did an abroad program. So we kind of delved our questions into there a little bit differently as to what they got from a 3-week, a 6-week, or a full semester program. And, they really didn't do their due diligence enough from their feedback to connect with experts overseas when they were overseas. They just kind of worked in their field. They did their kind of touring, they took in some of the culture, but really didn't take an approach to do some kind of homework ahead to meet with some people out there outside of those organizations. Many wish they did that. Number 10, they didn't understand the real numbers, right? There's a big difference between gross salary and net, right? What you make after you take home, after taxes. So in any job that they had or anything that they were doing as far as internships, what you get paid and actually what you take home are different. And your travel and really the bottom line numbers, because you do have to survive in college. So know your real numbers, and most importantly, know your tax bracket. That's what many students said they wish they really understood a little better and felt like that was a mistake that, many of them had made. Number 11, not attending outside campus events. For example, other career fairs. Many students just stuck with their own, but as you know, there's plenty all over their state. They could have really attended and been active more in a lot of those. Also, industry-focused events where many students aren't at. They wish they really took those approaches earlier to connect with people where they weren't in that friction of a career fair, right? Where everybody was competing for the same thing. Instead, we use an example in our some of our other episodes. Teachers convention with teachers. They volunteer, young people, instead of interning at a school, many of them actually volunteered at many of these conventions because they made tons of contacts. They weren't just siloed into one area. So getting off campus and being more active off campus was a big one as well. Number 12, viewing LinkedIn and cards as only for business people instead of their own brand and instead of being able to network. That one speaks for itself. Number 13, not balancing skills with experience and really being too narrow-minded in their internships or passion projects instead of focused on new skills relevant to their industry, by learning new things weekly. They felt they didn't take the approach of, looking at something that you can get direct experience or you can build the skills that people are looking for in different fields, not necessarily one you'll end up in, but one that you definitely can build those skills in. Number 14, they failed to build networks of targeted and relevant people that they discovered early on that potentially could introduce them or hire them later, in school or even after graduation. Number 15, they needed to manage their time gaps during the day more effectively. Sean, actually on our longcast and in a couple episodes, he talks a lot about his experience on Stevens Institute, where he got really good after freshman year, because let's face it, many of us have to learn freshman year from our mistakes. And he picked up pretty quick that those gaps during his day were his time to actually shine and execute and get projects and homework done, because he wanted to have a social life on the weekends and at night, here and there, but he also knew he needed to do his internships and he needed to do other things and balance his time. So those time gaps were something that were really helpful for him, but many students said they wish they would have managed them better. Number 16, they wish they took more advantage of on-campus resources, more specifically speakers that would come on, clubs, events, things like that. Number 17, they lack the ability to tell strong stories of relevance about themselves. Here's why, right? Many people don't like to talk about themselves, but there is a way to articulate what you're doing and the currency of where you're at in your young chapter, whatever chapter of your life that you're in. There's a way to articulate that. And it's not, being cocky or arrogant. Sometimes talking about yourself can feel that way. It's more about being able to actually give kind of a timeline, but also incorporate some of the experiences that you had and tie them into being relevant to what you're actually, talking to somebody about or involving yourself in. And if it means getting hired or interviewing, that would be specifically an example. Number 18 is being able to balance the desire to want to help people, aka we call it the helping bug at the Student Success Podcast. So let me paint a picture for you. You're a junior, senior in high school, or you're in college, and you really enjoy helping people. You have to ask yourself that, right? Do you enjoy helping people? And there's a major difference, and understanding this is very crucial and may save you thousands of dollars and hundreds of hours in mistakes. The difference between being interested in helping people and actually making it your 50-hour-a-week job, when you graduate. And, having the ability to have multiple wheels turning for yourself on nights and weekends, and be able to balance that need to help people by volunteering first. Because the realities are this: when you graduate, you've got to be able to help yourself first so that you can help people. And if you really are passionate about helping people, that's great. We are too. But what we would recommend that you do is that you make sure, for example, or two, nursing, social work, these are areas where you're truly having an impact on people. Or if you're working with kids, they don't necessarily right away pay the best. And you have to be able to understand if it's a field that you really want to go into, get yourself into those environments, but do it on a volunteer capacity to start and really get a sense of what you would be doing, or just volunteer at other groups and organizations so that you have this balance of helping in place with actually what you're going to pick for your field or, your industry of interest. Number 19, they fail to understand the true physical work environments. I'm going to say this again, and Alex is actually looking at me right now. When students try to pick their field and they don't get into the physical work environments ahead of time to really understand what it's like, and I'll use example of the smell of a hospital or blood, knowing what a job really entails, right? If you want to be a lawyer, there's a lot of reading. If you get headaches when you read, probably not a great field. But the physical work environments themselves tell a very, very accurate tale for why students end up switching their field. And knowing those personalities as well come from that work environment. What are the types of people that work there? Many students said they picked their field and didn't end up getting into their work environment for 2.5 years after. And I remember on at least 30 to 40 instances toward the end of a lot of our research, this kind of really was coming up a lot more. And I think it's probably because we were asking the question a lot more as well. But if we really went back and talked to all 647 students about this, I bet we probably would have gotten a lot more of it. So last but not least, number 20 was asking for help with a lot of pre-planned questions and approaches in their field to get more information before they made big decisions. Today, we call this our golden key. And it's something that we can tell you any level of a student, no matter what field you're in, no matter what major or maturity level or what have you, this approach, this golden key, which is one of our podcast episodes, is so invaluable. And it's something that students take with them for life because it's an approach that really involves them knowing that they don't know it all, right? And people do want to help students if they just ask for it. Many postgrads, this was one of the biggest things, said we really wished we started to ask for some guidance and we're able to do our due diligence too and do our planning, but really wish they would have been able to ask for that guidance and knowing a little bit more about the who, the what, the when, the where, the why, and the how of asking experts for guidance. It's kind of a whole process around it. So that was the 20. I'm going to throw a bonus one in here for you guys, and I really appreciate you guys listening to this one today, because I hope you got a lot out of it. And I hope, as far as the write-ins and the things that you're going to come in with, we'd love to know what your favorite mistakes were that you're going to avoid right away. We hope you're able to take a bunch of things with you and put them into play right away. The bonus one is thought leadership. And this is one that many students said they wish they took more of a thought leadership approach, because it would have been something they could talk about more on interviews. And what thought leadership to us means, and we get into this in a lot of our podcasts. You, the listener, as a young aspiring student professional, young aspiring thought leader, you're getting information from us that's new to you. Most of your peers probably don't even know about it. What you can do with that information is start to put it into play, start to build your own student success for yourself and your own path. And true thought leadership is sharing that information with people and explaining certain things to them of how to do it, right? So you understand it, you start doing it, you help and teach others, and you're really having an impact with your peers. You start to stand out. That's thought leadership. So we hope you enjoyed this 3-part free training video series. And what we want you to be able to know and do now is that we're not just launching a platform, a program, and a podcast. We're launching truly the student improvement movement. And this is all geared toward real-world strategies and tactics that postgrads wish they knew that current students now can know. And it really is focused to what college doesn't teach. So if you think about a true complement to academia and maybe even that whole career approach, which we know not many students are picking careers anymore. They're going through chapters, they're reading through signposts, and they're really taking in a lot through their journey and their early discovery path. What we want you to be able to do is join us at studentsuccessu.com. And what you can do is you actually can sign up for free for the Get Set Up for Student Success 10-Day Challenge. What this is one thing each day that you can do to get yourself set up for success, so that by the time these 10 days are over, you'll have a full understanding of the beginning points of what you needed to get done and have set up, so that you can begin to put yourself out there and gain more information and be more productive. You'll also be able to sign up right there for our 7 biggest mistakes webinar that students make. And it's actually right there. You'll see the little sign up button for the webinar. You can check into that, sign up for it, and take a listen. These two things combined value are almost $900. And we give them away to you for free because we truly are passionate about helping you as a student get set up for your own success. So this 3-part video series was geared toward that, toward the key points and key areas that we know students struggle with. So eliminating first, video number 1, creating the brand of you, number 2, and number 3, these massive mistakes postgrads made that you can actually be aware of and avoid. We felt these were the 3 most important areas to get you started and get you ready for your own student success. Now, for some of you that have been listening already, great. But some of you may not know about our The Student Success podcast on iTunes. We'd love to take a listen there and subscribe. And also, we love when you share the love. If you are sharing that love, what you can do is you can obviously subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and let us know that you are. And here's why. We actually realized that many students wanted to be thought leaders very early on, and we wanted to create an opportunity where students could get real resume experience by actually promoting our podcast and also promoting student success in their school or on their campus. If you'd like to gain valuable resume experience at your school or on your campus, you can actually go to studentsuccessu.com/ambassadorship and just fill out that application there. What will happen is, in most cases, you'll get a call from one of our ambassadors on our team, and or myself potentially. Some days I try to pick up an hour where I'll reach out to you guys directly. I like to stay involved with our students globally and nationally and within your own state. So you may get me on the phone, or you may get one of our ambassadors, but we'd love to hear from you either way. And don't forget, when you do subscribe to our podcast, subscribe, rate, review, and share. And keep in mind the 4 things that we talked about as we wrap this video series up. When you join us, you're actually going to be able to do the 10-day Get Set Up for Student Success Challenge. You're also going to have the opportunity to listen to a free webinar of the 7 biggest mistakes that students make today that cost thousands of dollars that you can avoid. Also, subscribing to our podcast is third. We want to make sure that you're able to do that and get involved right away. And fourth, if you are interested in being a thought leader, you can actually apply for our Student Success Ambassadorship. Our first phase of that is a brand ambassador. Take it from there. And we really hope you got a lot out of this 3-part free training video series. We look forward to hearing from you. And anytime you have a question, feel free to write in. Talk soon.